Council meeting to order. Please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I think the last minutes that were in your packet was the called meeting of April the 23rd, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Mr. Sly? No. Okay. Then they stand approved as read. Presented. Report of the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor Rush, members of council. A few items of note tonight. One is I want to let you all know that the Chamber of Commerce annual dinner has been rescheduled for August 14th. Also want to advise that we recently executed our agreements to purchase power for the summer months of 2021 at a rate of $33.63 per megawatt hour, and for December 2021 at a price of $31.50 per megawatt hour. Both of those transactions are well below the target price of $36, which you all approved at last month's regular meeting, so we've already got good news for sure about our expenditures next year. Also, on an administrative note, I wanted to report that the Planning Commission has reviewed 4 responses to its request for qualifications related to review and possible revision of the zoning ordinance. The Commission has directed staff to pursue further discussions with the 2 qualified respondents who gave us the lowest relative quotes, but that will be coming to council also for review and blessing as well. And kind of somewhat related to the Planning Commission, I wanted to give an update on the Bedford Middle School project. Mr. McCormick has submitted the items to amend his conditional use permit. That will come before the Planning Commission on June 4th and will come before this body on June 9th next month. There is a public hearing required to consider the changes he's suggesting. Specifically, the change he's bringing up is removing the auditorium use from the project and replacing that with an additional 10 apartment units. In order to do that, again, there are public hearings that will be required. And we expect that for both the Planning Commission and the council meetings next month, we will have the doors open and have people who can participate in those hearings directly. And that concludes my report, but I'll be happy to respond to any questions you may have at this time.
Bart, can you give us an estimate, a rough number of what he presented as far as the auditorium, if we was to redo it?
Yes, I asked Mr. McCormick about the nature of his change, and essentially to rebuild the auditorium, it would add an additional $3 million in cost to the project, and I did advise him that the town doesn't have that kind of money, so we're not offering that, and consequently, I think that's the real impetus behind his requested change.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions?
I do. Do we have to, as far as the cleanup, it sounds to me like he's waiting for us to make a decision, and this could carry on for a while.
You're correct in that he is waiting for us to make a decision about his zoning application, but once he receives a definitive answer about the proposed change in scope, he will proceed with cleanup. Also, I'll advise you that the construction activity related to Old Yellow will take place simultaneously as well. He's trying to schedule everything at one time, both in terms of cleanup and construction, but he wants to make sure he understands the scope of the project before he commences cleanup.
So as far as us making a decision on the auditorium, because my understanding is last time he was here, there was still debate and discussion on that issue. And he doesn't know where we stand.
And hopefully he will as of June 9th.
So as far as an actual cleanup beginning, we're looking into July.
I think he'll commence once he gets the answer from council after June 9th.
And we're
And
anticipating that being June 9th.
yes,
Because I think he said he could start within 2 weeks,
Yes.
once he got the go-ahead.
the nature of the cleanup depends on whether or not he is going to have to replace the auditorium, which is a
Yeah.
much more delicate process,
Right.
versus changing the scope, which allows him to do things a little more quickly and mechanically.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding that topic?
I mean, Is there any way, I mean, I guess we can't give him a definitive answer until June 9th, but should we get together and solve that one question and try to speed up the cleanup process? Is there what, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd hate to wait another 30 days
Exactly.
So if we could get a general consensus, is that what you're at? Yeah.
that we're not gonna require him to build the auditorium because the cost is.
That's gonna require a change in the contract, though. We're gonna have to
think
Yeah,
that's
redraft.
that's true, that's the other piece to it, yeah, the performance agreement is gonna have to be
We'll
reworked.
have to give it to Lockerbie, and- right?
That's correct, and Mr. Lockaby knows that's forthcoming as well, so. It's,
So we're.
unfortunately, from an administrative standpoint, it's rather complicated, and that's the holdup at this point.
So should we be having a consensus so Lockerbie can get on with it, so that we can get on with the rest of it?
I can't speak for Mike, but I think he's prepared to make the necessary changes either way. The other thing I'll note, and for the benefit of the public watching, is the extension we granted, I believe, expires July 9th, so we're aware of that deadline as well. June 9th, we should have a definitive answer from council. Mike is working in anticipation of possible changes, and so we'll have a month to make amendments. You're gonna have to take additional action to amend the agreement you have as well, so.
Is that gonna require another public hearing for that piece too, or to amend the performance
I don't know that it
agreement?
would. It's probably a good idea to make that as public as possible. Really, the conditional use amendment, though, is the main bureaucratic issue at this point. And as much as I, appreciate your candor and concern, I don't really know that you can really get ahead of something
No.
that requires public comment because we don't know the nature of that comment.
Well, I think I'd asked in that meeting with him before, I wanted to see some numbers, because the numbers he provided was very confusing, but the big number was the one we just talked about with auditorium.
$3 million.
And $3 million answers the question, I think, for everybody.
I think you're right.
To do the zoning, do we need to change the contract before moving on amending the zoning?
No, everything's kind of contingent on the zoning at this point. And regrettably, the June cycle was the earliest we could do it. In fact, I think the advertisement hits the Bedford Bulletin next week, which was the earliest cycle we could have.
Well, that will be June will be a busy month for us, because we've got to finalize the budget and talk about that.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. There are no appearances before council. Council comments. I'll start to my left, Mr. Schoen.
I was gonna discuss that, what we just talked about with Mr. Warner, so that helps there. Other than that, for now, no comments.
Mr. Slot.
Nope.
Mr. Black.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Haley.
No.
Mr. Johansson.
The only thing I have is we're about to put up our baskets that a lot of the folks in the area have contributed to, including some of the folks on the council. So we've almost got to cover the money with it, and the rest of it, I'm going to take care of.
Yeah, I saw you on Facebook hanging baskets.
Yeah. I'm a basket hanger.
There were no committee meetings, and are there any reversions to the
Used
agenda,
to it.
Mr. Warner? Okay. There are no public hearings, consent agenda, appointment of member of the Economic Development Authority.
Mayor Rush, members of the council, there is currently a vacancy on the Town Economic Development Authority. Ms. Janae Welsh has expressed a willingness to serve on the authority if appointed by council, and tonight we are requesting that you consider appointment of Ms. Janae Welsh to the Economic Development Authority, said term to expire November 30th, 2021.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I'll make a note that she is a town resident and a business owner downtown. And this fills Mr. Putney's position?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Roll call.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley? Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Okay, under new business, a resolution, Business Appreciation Month.
The month of May has traditionally been designated within the Commonwealth as Business Appreciation Month in recognition of the many benefits to Virginia communities derived from their businesses. In appreciation of our industry, small businesses, and entrepreneurs, Council is asked to adopt a resolution declaring May to be a Business Appreciation Month in the town of Bedford. And if you'd like, I can read the resolution, or you can note that it's in the record.
Would y'all like Mr. Warner to read it?
I will waive the reading.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes. Can I have, who was first on that motion? Mr. Black was second. First. Okay.
Mr. Haley.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a yearly thing, the ordinance readopting and reenacting code provisions dealing with traffic laws.
Before you is an ordinance which readopts and reenacts Section 34-2 of the Town Code, incorporating by reference current provisions of the Code of Virginia dealing with traffic laws and motor vehicle operation. Failure to adopt this ordinance would mean that offenders would have to be charged under the state law rather than the town law. Any fines collected would then be payable to the state rather than to the town. The ordinance has been posted in 3 locations in the town in accordance with Section 2-54 of the Town Code, and tonight Town Council is requested to adopt the ordinance readopting and reenacting code provisions dealing with traffic laws.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mayor Rush?
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Okay, moving right along, realignment of Burks Hill Road, 4 lanes to 3 lanes. Enlighten us on that.
Yes, Mayor Rush, members of council, this is a follow-up to our conversations about the construction of a sidewalk, basically connecting Liberty Lake Park to the rest of town across 460. And the intent is to use VDOT revenue sharing grant funds for that purpose. As you will recall, back in at least the fall, we had a proposal to construct a crossing from one side of Burks Hill Road to the other at the park, but there were concerns about the safety of that approach given the width of the road and the nature of the traffic. So staff asked VDOT to revisit that, and what you have before you tonight is the result of that. VDOT is asking that we consider using what they call a road diet design for the proposed Burks Hill Road sidewalk project running from the Bedford Visitor Center to Liberty Lake Park. This would require that the existing 4-lane section of road be reduced to a 3-lane road with 1 travel lane north and 1 travel lane south, and a shared turn lane running down the center, both north and south. This is requested due to safety concerns at the proposed pedestrian crossing near Word of Life Evangelical Church entrance driveway. And this would decrease the pedestrian crossing in that area from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. There would also be a safety island installed in the center turn lane at the point of that pedestrian crossing. There would also be accommodations for 5-foot bike lanes on each side of Burks Hill Road within the area of the right-of-way. Basically tonight, we're asking council to communicate your comfort with directing VDOT to proceed with this plan and developing cost estimates. The intent is to keep this within the originally funded revenue sharing project, but I will tell you, if the cost were to increase based on the changes, we would look at proceeding with the other sidewalk projects, namely Peak Street and Independence, included in that grant, and looking at other funding for this one. So the main question before you tonight, and I have Wayne Hale from engineering staff also to answer questions, is to gauge your comfort level with this concept in directing VDOT to proceed with plans for your future consideration.
So the three lanes are gonna be from the visitor center to Word of Life coming out of town. And then how much further past Liberty Lake Park?
Really, it would go all the way to the town limits.
All the way, so it's the whole section?
It starts at the bridge and goes all the way past Liberty Lake Park to where 2 lanes.
Back to two lanes, so, okay, all right.
Have we had accidents in that area before?
Do we have accident data there? I don't know.
I think if you've ever been to a sporting event at the park, when people are trying to get into the park, the main lane is backed up down the road, and this would take care of a lot of that backup. If you have that center turn lane, you no longer have the backup for traffic on that. People are cutting out in the lane that, if you remember, it tells you to merge left. They're always cutting out in that area, which makes it very dangerous. So this it would help also put a little more safety into entering the park.
So it would be 2-lane, 122 to the bridge, to the visitor center instead of 4 lanes.
Right.
And also, it will address an issue of scale and speed there. The posted speed limit is 35 miles an hour, but given the width and the number of lanes there, I'm not going to confess to everything, but it's a challenge to observe the speed limit without really paying attention to it.
I think Todd could put a test to that. They work radar down that lot. It's traffic calming, well, I would call it.
And that's part of VDOT's recommendation.
Any idea what this, how much this is gonna cost us? I mean, is there any estimates at all? We're gonna have to wait for
Well,
them
we're
to.
kind of waiting for an okay before we went too far and get an estimate for it. No, I really don't know. The actual paving, I planned on doing Burks Hill Road in the future anyway. So we'll have all new pavement out there anyway. And then I already have a contract for line painting, which that would take care of the line painting. So really, the money would not come out of the grant itself. That would come out of street maintenance money.
Stuff that we've already put
So
out there.
we're looking at funds for the sidewalk and the concrete island. And I think they have some flashing lights up there for the pedestrians and a few other things.
So really, the total expense is the island.
Yes, and I think you've got some flashing signs over by your place on, yeah, and some extra stuff in there. And I think I saw a sketch of some rumble strips that people had thought about maybe putting there to wake people up coming from the lake and going out of town, so, you know. And the rumble strips were actually put in by the guys that paint my lines.
This is not a commitment to cost by us at all. It's purely just saying we like the design.
Yeah.
Are you willing to consider the design at this point, really? You don't even have to approve the design, but we would like your input to say it's worth pursuing and we can direct VDOT to.
And Mr. Haley, you seem to like it.
I think it'll work out well. You know, we've always tried to get some bike lanes in town, and this could be a start of something. If during bike season, if you notice, they like to ride Dickerson Mill Road, and I have no clue why, but this would make it a lot safer once they got in town on Burks Hill Road and getting back to, I think they come back in near Beals Restaurant when they're done riding. So, you know, you could start the bike lanes through town also. And I think that's also one part of our long-range planning, is to do that.
So we're just giving VDOT the okay for this estimation, and they'll come back, and we'll okay it and say we like it or don't like it.
Well, VDOT is not going to design it for us. We've got our engineer
Okay.
that's designing. They're the ones saying, we would like you to look at doing this, because they're not real happy with crossing 4 lanes. As far
Right.
as safety issues.
Yeah, that's what started this whole thing, was the concern of the
Right,
crosswalk across 4 lanes of road.
right.
Do we have a time frame?
Sounds like the main cost to us would be that island.
Well, a time frame, I can't speak for VDOT, but I would guess within 60 days of direction tonight, we would get something back.
We have I think I have a deadline of in June to have some kind of advertisement out. And that the engineer's already got a pretty good layout of what we want to do. We just need to put it on the final. And everything else, as far as plans, it's pretty much ready. They're like at 80, 90%.
well, we're ready to do the sidewalks, this is the holdup.
Correct. And then but once they finish their design, then it has to go back to VDOT for comments, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And then also we need to assess the budgetary impact.
And then they'll have to come back to council to get a blessing on that.
Yeah.
Well, if, and that's another part of the discussion on what, kind of what you're blessing on, like, if we can do this within the existing grant money, we would like to proceed. Now, we'll bring the final design back to you to make sure it meets your expectations, but we don't really want to hold up that part of it at all.
Is that's about the 150, is it, what we got in there, about 150,000 in that?
I think that's our match.
250. It was 250 to start.
Sidewalks.
It was 250.
Yeah.
And again, there are two other sidewalk projects attached to this grant that are also held up and we'd like to proceed with.
So the other two sidewalks can't get done until this gets blessed?
If we're gonna use this same grant, that's correct. That's why I say, frankly, if we have to go back to another funding source, that's okay. We could then turn those other projects loose and be done.
What you're saying is we've got the money in other sources.
Correct. And I'd like to use as much as VDOT's money as possible as put on ours.
I have a question, if you don't mind, Chief Foreman. Do you see any other issues or any other safety issues that possibly?
The only traffic issue is, and it's already a traffic issue, is at Independent or Industrial and Burke Hill Road. That's because the traffic is increasing coming off of Industrial with Cintas and some of the development. And I think with that center turn lane, it'll give vehicles a place to go, to come out. So right now, they have to sit there and wait until they get the opportunity to go, because both lanes, going both directions are full a lot of times. So it's a given opportunity if one way does pull out. But that's the only place that I have any concerns at all about the plan.
Thank you.
Okay.
My feelings on it are, maybe you all agree or disagree. We've been waiting for years to get this sidewalk, and we wanted something safe for a safety barrier for this crosswalk. And if you can get it within what we've got, we need to get it done.
Oh, yeah.
We can do it in budget and what we've got as far as other dollars for other projects, instead of going back.
Do we need a motion?
We're just voting on the design right now, not the
Correct.
cost, because I don't know the costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I would say, following up on Mayor Rush's comment, recommending moving forward with the design and also expressing a comfort level with existing funding sources.
Yes.
The $250,000.
Correct.
If you're comfortable
Yes.
doing that, I don't know.
I mean, that's the only money we've earmarked
Yes.
aside. I mean, if it's over that, then I think we need to talk about where it's kind of coming from.
It's still gotta come back for approval anyway, for the design, so.
Yeah.
Well, I'll argue like you would have argued in it. Your engineers designed it.
Listen, I'm just saying that you guys wanted it to come back, so.
Well, we did, because of our concerns about the safety. All right.
Are there any other grant, VDOT sources for RoDOT funding? I mean.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't know what's gonna change after the coronavirus as far as state funding and the state budget. I mean, they're meeting again, and cuts are gonna be made on the state level. So I'm not gonna count on anything from the state yet.
But we have these funds, we just haven't approved to spend
Yes,
them.
this isn't pending them paying it, we have.
Yeah. We already have those.
All right, we need a motion to, or you just need our blessing, or what do you want?
I mean, if there's a consensus, we can take that.
Let's do it in probably need to do it in a motion so it doesn't come back to bite me.
It's gotta come back for your blessing tonight.
So we move that the
We proceed with the,
highway department's design to see if, what the price is. Do I need to say more?
So moved.
are you comfortable with that, Bart?
I understand.
Okay. Do a roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Schley?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen,
Aye.
Mr. Stanley,
Aye.
Mr. Black,
Aye.
Mr. Haley,
Aye.
Mr. Johansson,
Aye.
Mayor Rush.
Aye.
Motion passes with 7 ayes.
Okay, and the last thing is, I had some concern about getting on to phase 2 of the business support program. Mary could probably give us an update on what we have already, and then discuss on how we want to proceed on phase 2. Can you just give us a number? Don't need to know who, just a number.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To date, we have received 26 applications. Running the gamut of the parameters you've had, we have 2 that I need to confirm that they are indeed for-profit and meet the retail definition.
Okay.
So 26, and I believe you benchmarked 30 for 150,000.
And in noticing that, and I had a discussion with Mary and Brian caught me on this. I pulled the minutes. We had an issue with the 10 people, and I didn't remember it being in a motion until I read the minutes, and then Mr. Brian, I was wrong, Mr. Sly was right. And I said it in public. But the problem with restaurants is you can have a restaurant with 15 people there, but not 2 of them are full-time, the rest are part-time and maybe work 1 day a week. So that 10-person number is kind of penalizes some people, if you all understand what I'm saying.
So were you thinking 10 full-time employees, Brian? Or when you?
Well, first, before we go any further,
We need to correct this first one.
the current,
Yeah.
The current, we're talking, do we need to correct that? Is it created an issue?
currently,
Is that a
there's
problem?
nothing in this application that specifies any number. Correct?
That's correct. There is no
There
number
is no
defining
number in here
small
currently.
business. We
But
didn't
the
pass-
motion,
And so, at this point, it doesn't seem to be an issue.
Okay.
So I'd let a sleeping dog lie and
Yeah.
finish out, because the applications are dead, or closed on Friday, correct?
They will close this coming Friday, the 15th.
So I think 1.0, if you want to call it that this application
Yeah.
is fine. I don't see any
That
reason.
was just a ballpark figure. I mean, you're right, they could be more, could be less, yeah.
but you called me out on it, that's the reason I'm.
No, I don't see any reason to change it
Change
now.
it now because we're, okay.
Okay.
that's-
Correct. Now, 2.0, we might have a discussion, but as far as this application with retail and restaurants, I think you're already through the process.
Yeah.
And we gotta see how, we said we're gonna put our feet in the water, let's see how it goes, and we don't know yet, right? And we're gonna, how soon do you expect a turnaround after the deadline of the 15th to actually be distributing?
The
checks?
EDA has called a meeting for the next Friday, May 22nd. They'll take action on the applications that they've received at that time. And then, working with the finance department, they'll be ready to go as quickly as they can to actually release the funds. But we'll know after the EDA meeting who they
So
know is
earliest, we're
qualified.
talking end of the month?
I'd like
probably.
to be sooner than that, no later than the end of the month.
So you're okay with it?
With the
No.
first,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
You're good with how it's been going so far?
It's been
No
very good.
glitches on your end?
Nope.
Okay, now we'll get on to phase 2, or 2.0 as you want to call it. I think we need to set some parameters on how we're gonna do this one, and some deadlines, and who we're going to help fund. And I'll just leave it to you, Brian.
Why you living?
We've had, well, I mean,
Thank
Tim and you are the Economic Development Committee meeting, and Tim brought up the first one, and let's see what your thoughts are, and we can debate them.
Well, I mean, I think in looking at the way the first one has gone so far, the applicants it seems to be a smooth process. We've had a pretty good turnout, but not overzealous turnout. So the 2.0, if you want to call it that, is just the second phase where we can open it up to other businesses. I, for one, would rather just tighten up the eligibility and not exclude businesses. I think when we get into, my personal opinion is, I don't think we should be labeling essential, non-essential. This business deserves it, this business doesn't. I would prefer to open it up and just strengthen the criteria. And I think that's the way to go. At least that's what I envisioned in this second phase of it. And we originally had a funding mechanism, I think, of 300,000. We cut it to 150. And so this second phase, I think, I would be comfortable with 150, and then just tightening up some of the criteria and taking off restaurant and retail and leaving it open to other businesses.
Are we gonna leave if she has 26, you know what she said?
26 what?
Applicants.
She has 26 applicants. Yeah, this doesn't affect them. And
Well, the only thing I'm thinking about is there's about $20,000 will be remaining.
Yeah, anything that's left over after from the
Would just
first
carry over.
150 should go towards the, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be 150 plus whatever's left over in the pot if we just had, yeah, I mean.
Yeah,
But you did say you had like two more you have approved yet, right? On that?
No.
Because you said 26, you said plus two or something.
Of the 26, 2 of them I need to confirm that they are
Okay,
indeed
that's
meet the
what I wanted to
criteria.
know.
So that number could go down, but
Got 3 more days. but
You got about 20,000 left over. Right.
5 times 4.
good,
Well,
yeah.
if you get the 26. I'm just,
Well, I definitely think it needs to be brick and mortar, because obviously in the town.
Well, I would suggest, I mean, the owners of, ones who own buildings or rent buildings. For example, I think salons and barber shops should be right at the top of the list.
Yes.
I mean, they have no income, zero, so I would say salons, barber shops, the owners who pay the bills, pay the rent, mortgage, electric bill, whatever, should be right there. And then, what other ideas you all have?
Well, I was gonna say brick and mortar, which is what you're saying.
Correct, yes.
And I think we also need to include dance studios and gyms.
Right.
And those kind of things. Because they were considered
Yeah.
they were considered non-essential. So they
Can-
had to close the doors.
Can gyms open right now?
Gyms?
No.
No,
I don't think they can, yeah, okay,
government hasn't opened yet.
yeah.
but I
But
think.
yeah, I agree.
I think you almost have to define, I mean, help me with this, Mario, you're gonna have them coming out the woodwork. I don't wanna pick and choose winners, but we need to be frugal on tax dollars.
So the way the Economic Development Authority ended up defining it, they found the town code definition of retail or retailer, so that it would be actually tied to something related to a business license. So you also have other definitions in the town code under the taxation section that may apply for professional services and personal services. So I'm not sure if that'd be one way to define them, because they're very specific. Professional has a laundry list, and then personal seems to catch everything that isn't professional in the definition.
in my case, I'm not wanting to exclude either one. Like I said, for me, I just would rather do the criteria of basically ensuring there's an owner, that they're paying rent or lease on a brick and mortar. And, you know, if you wanted to put 10 or less employees or whatever, just to strengthen up the criteria and not, say, exclude professional services. You know, because professional services is a wide range of services. It's not just, I mean, it's architects, attorneys, it's public accountants, dentists, engineers, land surveyors, veterinarians, practice of the healing arts. And so, I mean, that's just me.
Yeah, one other thing I think that we need to think about, obviously, too, is the uses of funds. Obviously, inventory is not really applicable to a lot of these service-type businesses. Number 5, the compensation stuff, we should take that out anyway. That's probably, I meant to get that taken out last time, you know. Marketing, I mean, that's, we can leave that in there, but where I'm going with that is if we're not gonna allow a use for purchasing inventory, I mean, is 5,000 still the right number for the size of the grant? I mean, you're not gonna be able to use it for rents and utilities. You know, I mean,
I thought we were gonna see how it played out before we tweaked it. I mean, I don't know how it's working. We're just
Well,
kind
we're
of
not
winging
gonna
it.
know how it's working.
We're
No, we
winging it.
won't.
I mean, let's see what happens.
I would say the bulk of it this time is going to be for startup costs. Inventory, like you said, electric bill, maybe catching up on rent, mortgage, whatever. I would say probably startup costs for the most
Yeah,
part.
the phone calls that I got was that people are hurting for their rents and the utilities.
Mhm.
And,
I can see
getting
that.
behind and never catching up.
Yeah.
And then not opening the doors again.
All right.
I kind of tend to agree with Tim. I don't know that five's a good number. I mean, we're not replacing inventory. A restaurant would have to replace inventory because their food's spoiled or whatever, but you know, these folks, do they really have inventory? They just need to worry about keeping the rent paid or the mortgage paid and the utilities on.
Yeah.
So there's,
I'm comfortable with 5.
I'm okay with 5.
I wouldn't argue for a little less just for that purpose, but anyway.
So, Mary, the question, you have to approve the applications, right, before it goes to the,
EDA.
EDA?
I'm reviewing them for completeness.
Then the EDA actually approves the grant.
So it basically has to go through two processes before it gets, one process before it gets to the EDA anyway. So, like Mr. Sly said, open it up, put some of the, correct some of the restrictions right there and go from there, and give it opportunity first come, first served, the way I look at it. And I know you disagree, but
When you say process, we're talking about just, Mary's just making sure they filled out the form correctly.
Yeah.
It's not much of a process.
And-
That's.
And I'll
fill
say
this out
this,
right.
and I said the last time, I think it needs to be pretty black and white, so there's no gray areas in it. And I think we're opening it up to a lot of gray area based on these definitions.
I mean, I look at the gray area and I think if you've got 25% reduction in sales, it's not for me to determine whether or not your business is viable or not, or whether you think they deserve the money or not. I think if you're hurting, you're hurting, whether you're owning a dance studio or a barber shop or a restaurant. If you need the income, you need the income. And I, for one, am not comfortable excluding anybody, and that includes attorneys, that includes anybody like that. I just,
So, what was the professional, is it professional service? Or are you just saying professional and personal services then?
I'm saying if you, that's why, again, I'm not wanting to label it.
You don't want to label it that?
I want to just strengthen the criteria.
We'll strengthen it. How are you gonna strengthen it over this, Brian?
Well, I mean, I think if you want to add an amount of employees, full-time employees or less, that'll help strengthen it some. We can start to go through that list, but I mean, are you wanting to sit here and go, okay, it's okay for this business and not for this business? Is that?
No, we don't need to get into that
No.
situation where we're,
Because that's what we did last time, and that's where I'm not,
yeah.
you know, Darren's right, we wanted to see how it would go. In my personal opinion, I'm comfortable with the way it's moving forward, so that's the reason I'm wanting to expand it, because I have talked to business owners who weren't involved, you know, in the retail or restaurant, but they're still, you know, hurting, and they're still not allowed to be open, or their business has suffered tremendously. I don't think they should be excluded or wait any longer.
Well, I'm of the opinion, and because you and I differ, I think it's the difference between essential and non-essential, and I told you about one business just chose not to open it, they consider it an essential business, but they get benefits from other benefits. If you choose not to be open and you can, and your business is going south,
It's their fault,
it's their fault.
yeah.
But I mean, there are restaurants that are currently closed that could be open.
Well, and really and truly, the restaurants are, not all, some are making some money by takeouts, and ABC has now allowed them to have drinks off premise. So, you know, they are making some money, whereas the professional services have zero. Now, you get into, I think the gray area is probably the personal services, to where, you know, attorneys, court's still in session, right?
Not really.
I mean-
Emergency hearings and things like that.
I know
I haven't been to court in a long
I
time.
mean, I know I talked to Judge Updike here, and he says, the only thing he said, if you want a divorce, you're gonna stay married for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, bond hearings, things like that. are
Yeah,
going, you
so
know,
there are things
child
going on that
matters.
attorneys can get some income, but professional services, nothing like we were talking about. Salons, barber shops, gyms, they have nothing. They're totally shut down. So I think that's where we need to draw the line somewhere.
And this is the tough one, because like I said, I mean, the retail and restaurant, pretty easy to define. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
That's where it gets a little bit, and that's where maybe it's, like Brian, I mean, you can't define it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but in my eyes, if I chose to own a vape shop for my profession, I shouldn't be excluded.
Right.
If I'm losing income like somebody else is,
That's retail.
but I'm just saying,
Yeah, that's where we don't want to get into that.
no, I
Yeah.
don't. I would rather strengthen up the
Right.
criteria and say, hey, this is the criteria, you meet it, you're good to go.
And that's kind of why I'm wondering is, are we gonna have more than 30, a lot more than 30 apply this time around?
I don't know. And
I think you will.
Well, if you do, you've said that it is, when the money's gone, the money's gone. I mean, at least we're trying to do something. And I'm not trying to separate people and say, you're essential and you're not. I mean, trust me, I see enough of that every day. It aggravates me to even discuss essential and non-essential. It doesn't show up in the Constitution, I don't think it
Well,
belongs
nothing,
here.
the Constitution said the window anyway, I think, but anyway.
That's a shame.
Do we know, Mary, as far as people, so of the 26, they're all restaurant or retail, correct?
Correct.
Do we have numbers on how many restaurant retail businesses are in the town?
My original count, and this is from business license data, which has been changing daily, about 25 of each. And that was generally excluding the chain
So like 50
retailers and chain
total?
restaurants. About, yes,
So we've got over half that have applied.
correct. Now, some don't meet the criteria for having been in business for 6 months prior to March 1, or having a license prior to that, so that excluded a couple.
But they have, that deadline is 3 days away, right?
15.
Right.
Friday.
15,
Right, so
yeah,
after that, they're not eligible.
right.
I was just wondering how many other businesses, we're gonna get close to exhausting restaurant retail, and then, that they will, if we approved them all, then that would be all that could get it, right? I mean, there wouldn't be, even if there's money left, no one else fits this criteria.
Correct.
I think the ones that needed it were notified somehow and jumped right on it pretty quickly, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah, I sent out an email. Some of them already knew because I put it in an email the week before to be watching for some action perhaps from council.
And I think some of us advised them.
And then some also watched Facebook, and I got a lot of calls actually from salons, like one call during the EDA meeting. So they're,
It just bothers me that we open it up so broadly and you're gonna get overwhelmed and it's a first come, first serve. There's a limit. And the reason I stick to essential, non-essential is that non-essential, we're definitely told not to open, and essential, you have a choice.
Right.
But it's hard to sit here and pick and choose winners. You can't. And the EDA followed out letter to the law. They were concerned about it not being a gray area when they talked. They wanted it black and white. So it was no real decision. You
Right.
didn't met the criteria. They went through what I'm understanding, they didn't want to have to make that decision. If it met the criteria, they got it. They just had to do the formal.
And that's what I'm advocating. If you meet the criteria.
Well, we need to set the criteria, that's the debate.
Is there any definition in the town code, like this retailer definition, Mary, that we could use that would apply, that would encompass most of what we're looking to do? You think, or is it?
No, I mean, you can exclude, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, you can start excluding by using certain things like professional services.
Well, brick and mortar's gonna solve it too. But then I really don't wanna see, self-employed contractors coming in.
Does self-employed contractor have brick and mortar to pay for?
I'm talking about, without calling it a profession.
Independent contractors?
Independent contractors,
Independent, yeah.
excuse
They
me.
got own,
Independent
But if they
contractors.
have a brick and mortar building too, how can you exclude them?
Well, that's,
that's where I'm at. I don't think we should. That's me.
Probably the only way is essential, non-essential. I mean, when you get right down to it, I don't know, we can't go down business by business. But when you say, okay, contractors, they're still open for business, right? Attorneys are, for the most part. Yeah. So when you really look at it, I mean, yeah, you want the ones who really need it to get it. But how do you draw the line for the EDA to be able to go in and say, okay, y'all have it written here in black and white?
Okay, I mean, so then move the number from significant impact from 25 to 50. I mean, move that number, because if you're a contractor and you've lost 50% of your sales, you probably deserve some money too. You gotta, that's.
But
again,
technically, you've not been shut down.
Right, but I go back to, we did restaurants and retail, and restaurants
Yeah.
could be open up, so, you know, we didn't do that in round one, so I'm not sure in round two.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to tighten it up, again, I'm okay tightening up the eligibility, I just,
So you're saying go from 25 to 50?
50% loss.
50%
loss,
loss.
is that, you know,
Would remove the restaurant retail requirement too.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's.
Okay, well,
They
that's-
had their shot.
They've had their shot, there's no restaurant
Yeah.
retail.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like we want to help the salons, right? I mean,
Yes.
Oh, definitely,
yeah,
the ones who were forcibly shut down.
right.
they're at zero.
And the gyms and the
Right.
Yeah,
physical activity stuff.
correct.
And again, it's brick and mortar, so that does eliminate a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
Which is hard because there's no guarantee that they're going to open back up.
Well, I've
You give
been,
the money and then they don't open
I've been
back
told
up.
if they don't get any help, they're not gonna open back up. They can't.
And that's what we're trying to avoid here, just trying to help. I mean, because if they don't open back up, that's gonna be a loss in revenue for the town. So, I mean, if we can help keep these businesses afloat and they stay, then it's gonna benefit us all in the future.
Well, what's the rest of council think about a 50% reduction? Is that a game changer?
I could live with that.
If you've been shut down, you should be able to meet.
Oh,
that.
yeah, you're almost at zero, probably.
Zero revenue.
If the door's been closed for the last,
Almost 2 months.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, you probably, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Do we wanna put an employee limit on it? Just to make sure we're keeping this small business and not,
And not one, I mean, more than one?
what do you mean?
More than one full-time.
More than one full-time employee, or?
10 or less, right?
10, I would go with 10 or less. but-
Full-time.
But at least more
10
than
or
just
less
the owner.
full-time.
More than just the owner. Like, say it's an owner, but no employees. I mean, are we talking about them?
Well, let me just ask, do you want to consider the term full-time equivalent as well? 10 full-time or full-time equivalent employees?
Yeah, because of that part-time thing I just brought up. Yeah.
Because salons and barber shops probably don't have,
They're not gonna have 10 full-time.
no.
Well, they'll
I'm
have
saying 10 or
one,
less.
they'll have
They-
an owner.
Right, but down
The
to,
owner.
should we have a floor too, though? You got a ceiling. Should you have at least one full-time employee besides yourself?
Outside yourself.
Outside of yourself, that's not bad.
At least one full-time.
Or at least one
I'm
full-time
thinking of
employee as a
a
minimum.
salon has
Right.
got the owner and then they rent the chairs.
Right.
Does that constitute full-time employee, or is that?
Yeah, I'm wondering that
They're all
myself.
working contractors.
'Cause-
Yeah,
I mean, that's obviously who we're trying to help.
correct.
No opinion.
That just makes a question for me, for the salon.
What?
We don't-
When you're done with your deliberations, if there was still a question for me about salons, whether or not that was just for the owner or the owner who has rental spaces within their facility, how does that work? And if they're independent contractors under the salon owner or barber shop owner, I honestly just don't know how that structure works, and I think a lot of them, they're different. Some are done one way, and some are done as independent or sole proprietors with,
I think
1099s.
that,
So,
yeah, but I think the requirement of having to pay rent to utilities, things like that.
I'd almost get away from full-time employees, because
Okay,
some may not even have full-time, just
I'm good with that.
put part-time, or,
So you could have the salon owner get the 5,000, but none of the independent contractors that work there would get anything.
that's what I
And
want to clarify.
but they're the ones paying the bill, or that person is paying the
The
bill.
salon owner is,
Yeah.
but the independent contractor is eligible to get.
They would be, I guess, because if they're a business.
They're independent contracts eligible for unemployment.
Whereas the salon owner, I don't think gets that
No.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So what do y'all want to do on this? I want to help the owner out, but we don't need to help all the,
No, is that not covered under?
well, see, this question come up with the EDA about a business that has stalls, and they sell antiques, and that was, they got
Sublet, yeah.
sublet,
Yeah.
and it was,
Yeah.
I think it came down, we're looking after the guy that owns the building.
Yes,
Person.
yeah.
And that's how it's currently written, is it is the owners of brick and mortar businesses, is your current language and your purpose.
I think that would stick to that.
Well, that should stay.
Yes, yeah.
So that would have solved
Yes.
the question we're having.
I think you're right, yes.
So if the salon owner is just one employee, because the other people are independent
I
contractors.
think we got away from we're getting away from the employees, right?
No, we were talking about that.
But I'm asking, are we getting away from that?
The cap of 10, I thought we had kind of agreed on it, at least
At least 10, well, 10 or less.
10 or less.
So,
10 or less, we just didn't put a.
Didn't
But
put
the only
it-
person eligible would be the owner of the brick and mortar.
Right.
10, but
No, full-time, part-time, right?
Don't
right,
just
if
I
you
mean-
have part-time employees,
Yeah.
you have more than 10.
Or full-time equivalent, and that takes care of that. Doesn't it?
2 for 1 is generally your full-time equivalent, part-time, 2 part-time equal 1 full-time.
Depending on the business,
Yep.
like restaurants.
Or an hour basis, so.
Have you has there been any other types that have inquired about this?
Had
Nonprofits, I'm sure.
nonprofits have asked, I've had some not in town boundary. That was the first cut that came in. We've had a funeral home request, I've had a convenience store requested, which I presume is retail.
So just to kind of summarize, keeping the criteria the same, we're just moving the 25% to 50. And we're getting rid of the restaurant and retail. And then we're just, the owner, correct, is eligible. Owner of the business is eligible. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Yeah.
For round 2?
sounds good to me.
And we're taking out some of those uses of funds, just leaving it at 1 and 2.
These people don't have inventory.
I don't know, because again,
They
there's
could.
businesses out there that we may not be thinking about that meets this criteria. To say that they don't have inventory, I don't know that to be fact.
Well, I mean, salon and barber shops do, they sell all the hair stuff and all that mess. But,
I mean,
Now, if you have a salon, you have an apprentice. Apprentice is an employee of that salon.
That's,
Well, what's that got, I mean,
what's that got to do with this?
Well, you're talking about having employee of any business like that in the sense of speaking, so that sue as an employee. Could they-
okay, but that doesn't
It says
exclude
the
or
equivalent
include.
of 10,
Yeah.
Okay.
full-time.
The employee's not eligible for anything,
No,
just the owner. I mean, what do you want, Tim, to get rid of?
Well, number 5, we should have gotten rid of last time.
All right, I'm okay with striking 5.
I wonder if we should make a permissible use. I mean, we don't know what the regulations are gonna be for some of these salons and stuff. I mean, can he use this money for painting supplies, PPE?
Well, I mean, I can give you an example of where I think it's gonna be beneficial, because from what I understand from the governors, even when they take off their restrictions, for a long period of time, they're gonna be required for appointment only, so many per, in the salon. So those restrictions are gonna stay in place.
And they're probably going to be required to wear a mask.
Yes.
And they'll probably have to have masks there to supply to the customers who come in.
So should we
So
add
they can
that as a-
use, like we were talking about marketing. I mean, some of the salons might go out now and buy a program that allows them to track their appointments, things like that, not just a book. So this will help getting them to adjust, talking with Mary earlier in the week. Some businesses now are having to find other ways to, for instance, lawyers, you guys can do Zoom and things like that and have meetings. So these are just things that look like they may be the norm. Same thing here, this might help them, scheduling wise, things like that. So,
Zoom's free.
So, should we, instead of number 5, say cost associated with meeting any
Safety equipment.
safety regulations or something like that? I mean, Mary, what do you think? I mean, is that an expense that some of these are gonna see, you think?
It's definitely consideration in looking at the Executive Order 61, the salons and those who meet the personal care services, they have to do a thorough cleaning every 60 minutes. So
It's gonna cost.
yeah.
Yes, cleaning supplies.
I'd like
In
to
addition to
add
the
that
masks.
and replace number 5 with some kind of language.
Disinfection and PPE. If you want to clarify, that's.
If you want to clarify,
Inventory or.
inventory need to restart a business, I think cleaning supplies will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all you really need,
Yeah.
under the conditions.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, remember, we're talking salons. I think it'd be true with any other business that's got to start up.
Well, yeah,
Dance studios, gyms.
right.
What's that, Bart?
Churches.
Oh, well, that's the thing.
so when will the new application be available, after the old date, so when will it be the next?
That'd be on Mary, because she's the one who's got to process it.
Well, same process will apply, I believe, for phase 2, that you will take action and pass it to the EDA for ratification at their meeting on the 22nd. So they'll probably first take the current phase 1, close that, and then move on to this. So I'll have an application ready for them, just like I did that day, and we'll step through it, see if they have any questions, pull up any things we didn't think about that they think they need to address as well, like they did defining retail. And we'll go from there. And then, so then I guess the deadline would be the next question. How long do you want to leave this open? Most people I've found didn't need 3 weeks. They were done the next day.
Yep.
Because they've been doing this for putting in for other grant opportunities or other loans. So then we just have to schedule a meeting of the EDA to take action on them again. So, but this one, I believe we're going to probably have more than we had for this one. And there's probably going to be some more questions asked about, does it apply to me? And maybe some more parsing out of the information before it gets to the EDA. So
That's why it's making it so difficult, and it's not black and white.
So,
I think it's black and white.
No, it's not.
so we approved tonight, the EDA approves it on the 22nd. You got till, what's the 22nd, it's a Friday? 2 weeks from that Friday, or 2 weeks from, or just another week from that Friday?
So June, you put, what, Junior.
That's still another month before these guys gonna.
Yeah.
Jimmy, is there a way to speed this process up?
No, the EDA.
No.
So you're looking at a month or so before they can get,
Mayor Rush, I also wanted to address, you had said something about that you thought maybe 2,500 instead of 5,000. Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Tim and I brought that both up. I don't know that 5,000.
We can spread it around a
Pretty
lot
good.
more.
It's not a windfall, but it's a pretty good.
It's a good chunk. From a town of 6,800 people. I mean, there's other localities a lot bigger than us, giving less than that, so. I mean, I'm open to that idea, kind of what I'm not in stone on any of this, because it's all new ground and we don't, we're making it up as we go. But I think this is what Mary was saying, I want to speak for her, that we're gonna have more applicants now. And that at 5,000 a pop, it's gonna go quicker.
Well, but as we keep saying, when it's gone, it's gone.
True.
I mean,
That's why I
they'll-
just didn't know if maybe by making it 2,500, you're gonna be able to help more people. They're gonna get less, but you're gonna help more businesses. Just a thought.
Well, I use the analogy for this, my number was 3,000. You talking 3 months and a rent of $1,000 a month? Or utilities, I don't know what the utilities run, I heard about that too.
inventory, I mean, you can keep going down the list, that's why I said
I'll argue
5,000.
the inventory, Brian, I mean,
Yeah.
the idea is keep the doors open. And number one, you gotta pay your mortgage, your rent, stay in the building.
Yeah. You can't open back up if you don't have inventory.
I leave it as is and go with the changes we've made.
Keep it at 5,000?
Yeah.
Leave it 5, okay?
I mean,
And a pool of 150 again,
yeah,
Yeah.
including what's ever left over from.
yes, the rollover.
one, right?
Yes, correct.
Not 150 plus that.
Yeah.
100.
We still could get more applicants by Friday,
Yeah.
so there may not be.
There may not be any left over there. You're
Yeah.
right. There may not be.
I think everybody knows it, they've been it's been talk on the street.
The ones who need it are probably ready to put their application in, I would think,
Yes.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Well, it'll be,
whenever they can, yes.
so the EDA can vote on theirs, they'll have a long meeting and then approve what we're doing, which is they just want it black and white like we do.
Right.
And so there's really no debate, because if there's a big change, it's gotta come back to us again.
Correct.
Well, one question, Mr. Blacklock was marketing, do they need the marketing part in there, or do we need to take that out?
Well, if we leave it at 5, they're gonna have to spend it on some, they got plenty of money to.
Yeah.
We need a motion on that.
We're
Yeah, but I
gonna
gotta-
make a motion as soon as we make the decision.
Yeah, I gotta ask Mary one more question, because I don't want you to be stuck with this. So we are making this as a first come, first served basis. There's 2 ways they can apply, correct? This would be online, in which you receive the application, you would timestamp it. The other way would be what?
They can email it, they can put it in the Dropbox, they can bring it by and I meet them out front on that for some. We also have it on Google where they can fill it out electronically and I get an alert when that is loaded up. So about 4 ways people can submit applications.
So that you don't anticipate any issues with being able to timestamp and making sure.
But the only delay, and this is what the concern is getting it in the night Dropbox. They do pickups, they'll do as many pickups out of that box as we need. They've offered that for the staff that's in charge of that from the finance side. They currently do it morning and afternoon, and they bring them to me, and then I'll say it was in the AM box or in the PM box. Some people have actually emailed me and told me they're dropping it off, which helps because I count that as part of the date stamp. They're like, I just dropped it in the Dropbox. So I'm able to capture some of those date stamps. That's my only concern is who got in that box first, if it's a night poll.
Okay. So
If
it
it's
sounds
first.
like you can handle it. Okay.
Good.
How many
So
of them
that's
got
clear.
in the Dropbox?
I just want to make sure that.
That's been the majority of applications. I was surprised. I mean, they really did fit those in one envelope that fits through that night box. They've been really big, but that's been the majority of those have been people who printed it out and then
Well, that's,
sent it through.
yeah, a lot of people are not
Yeah.
computer savvy as some of us. And think that's, you know, they get the print, fill it out. I mean, I had to go back today to try to find it. It's difficult to find it on the website.
Yeah, I have a separate website for my office because it's really hard to drill down through the town. You have to go through and you have to hit, there's a number in front of the address. So I've just made betteranbedford.com, and it's just one thing for grant. It's right there, and that's all it is, betteranbedford.com/grant. That's where I've been directing people to for that information. And that's where most people look like they've been printing it
They
from.
print it, print and drop it.
Yeah, to print it and write it and send it.
All right, let's put it in a motion. Brian, I'm
I'll make
sure
a-
we're copious on your note taking.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Town of Bedford Business Support Program Description 2.0 as noted. The changes that we made, one being under eligibility, significant impact 50%, and reduction in sales. Removing number 4, which is restaurant and retail, and then removing number 5, compensation.
So moved.
Wait a minute. So we're opening this to everybody, is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
You made the motion and we'll have a discussion. Must be brick and mortar.
That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so your motion is the same as what we had on the first one, except it'll be 50% reduction in sales and removing restaurant or retail.
Correct.
So it's open to everybody. I still think it has to be a little more definitive on that, Brian.
We can discuss that under discussion if you'd like.
Well, we will.
And it eliminates number 5.
Correct.
Eliminate 5, which is use of funds. We got the criteria, one thing we're talking about, use of funds. All right, you
Mary,
got your motion.
Can we, before we go on, just to clarify this a little more, can we put somewhere that you must be the owner of the business? Just so we can clarify that in writing, because it's not in here saying that.
To help the owners of locally owned, non-franchise, for-profit brick and mortar businesses.
Yeah, it's not listed under criteria or.
It's under funding,
Okay.
Actually, it is on his first and last name, business owners.
Well, it doesn't.
but we can move that, I guess,
I just want to make sure, Tim, that's all.
I mean, we can move that under that locally owned, non-franchise, for-profit brick and mortar
Correct.
business.
Yeah.
Down under criteria, is that what you're saying?
If you want to just add that criteria that just says clarifying that the owners are eligible. I think that was the phrasing that I heard tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, could you read back what the motion is?
That's not.
I mean, just say yes, no. But it was noted.
Okay.
As
Can you do
consensus, I
that
think
so
we
know
did.
where we are, because we kinda got off base.
You have number 2, significant impact under criteria, 50%. You've removed restaurant or retail establishment, replaced that with the owner of the locally owned, non-franchise, for-profit brick and mortar restaurant, and removed compensation under uses of funds.
The only piece of that is eliminate that word restaurant. So locally owned, non-franchise, for-profit brick and mortar business.
I can do that.
Yeah.
That's all that I have for changes.
Just one question on the back of the page, on page 2. it says profit and loss statements from February to March or April, is that still gonna be the same, or we need to change it?
Nope.
February, March, and April.
You won't have, it's gonna be you.
It just says 90-day average of sales in months before March 15. I didn't know that, because we having it later, would it have to change?
It's not that much later.
Okay, just ask that question.
Yeah, I doubt anybody shut
Yeah.
down right now.
Yeah,
You've been shut
you've been shut down. That's not good.
So we got a motion, I'll second it. Oh, you already said it, okay, I've never heard that, we started talking, okay. I'm sorry, Stacy.
No problem.
Okay, based on what the clerk reported to me. All right, is there a discussion?
I mean, when we started, I thought we were gonna wait and see how this worked, and I still don't know. I know we've had applicants. Now, I don't wanna delay, because obviously time is of the essence right now for these businesses. That was kind of, I wasn't planning on making this, 2.0 tonight. I thought we were gonna wait and see what happened. I understand the argument for we need to move now. I mean, I have a difficult time with the whole thing, to be quite frank with you, as far as what we're doing, but these are strange times we're living in, and drastic measures need to be taken, so. I mean, I've been persuaded that this may be, I feel like we're jumping the gun a little bit, but I just wanted to mention that. So, those are my thoughts.
And something came up, and without, I think we need to limit it to one person. If they have multiple brick and mortars, I think they should only be eligible for one grant.
One owner. What if one owner has two?
Two or three different businesses,
Yes, one business,
it should be one
Yes.
grant per owner.
yeah.
Does that, you follow what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know that this will happen here,
Right.
but I saw.
Do we have
I
that?
recognized it in the last one.
Two different brick and mortars by one owner in town?
You have one
No,
brick and
one
mortar
brick
and
and
you
mortar
have
with-
multiple businesses.
Okay.
Basically, it's saying if you own the Forks or you own the Subway, you can't do it from one, Subway or the Forks, so.
If one owner owns two separate businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
If you've
speaking
got-
of, how do you define that,
And if
Tim?
they're both businesses, you need help, I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, they've got their separate business license, they've got their separate, if they got separate utilities, they're paying separate rents.
I don't know. I mean, our goal is to keep them going.
When they pay taxes, do we lump them back in?
that gets back to, you want to spread it out as much as you can.
Yeah, I don't,
And by
I don't know that
allowing,
anybody could double dip or triple dip
Yeah.
on this, that's my point.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it ought to be limited to one grant per
Person.
person.
Yeah, we've
yes.
already gone through this thing of whether to go to 25 rather than 5.
Well,
I think we're being generous for our community with the, I would agree, one is more than sufficient.
Yeah.
you got that? You okay with that amendment to that motion, Brian?
So we're amending the motion.
Yeah. To one person.
To clarify that only one person.
Yeah, to clarify.
Even if
only
they
one
own separate
person
businesses.
Is eligible. If they have 10 businesses, they can get one grant, or 2 businesses, one grant.
Can
To
you
help
just add
spread
that
it
into the
around.
criteria?
Huh?
Can you just add that into the criteria?
That's what he's asking, and I'm just trying to get a feel for.
Trying to think with the down.
Most of these people are independent by themselves, but I do know there's some situations that we didn't address it in the last one. I don't know if it came to fruition or not.
Mr. McCormick owns the lofts and Beals, so I guess he would just get one.
Right, trying to think of it, yeah.
Right, I mean, it applies to him too.
Yeah, why do you need to? We're
Yeah.
trying to help everybody.
Correct.
I'm trying to spread it around.
All right.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that.
I don't know if the lofts would qualify.
But that's a good example.
I was just trying to think of something.
Yeah, I mean, that, I think it's fair.
Okay.
Hung up either way.
Roll call.
Let's roll.
Mr. Schoen,
Aye.
Mr. Stanley,
Aye.
Mr. Black,
Aye.
Mr. Haley,
All right,
Mr. Johannesson,
Aye.
Mr. Sly,
Aye.
Mayor Rush.
Aye.
Motion carries with 7 ayes.
I thought maybe he was speechless.
Well, no, I was gonna say something else, but I'm, we're adjourned.